Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the latest session of Ask the Broncolor Assistant. This time we're going to be talking about the Picolite and its accessories. We have some wonderful demos for you planned today, so definitely thank you for coming, and for those who are watching later, thanks for watching again. We do, of course, as always, have our Q&A box open, so please feel free if you do have any questions as we are coming. Send them to that Q&A section and we will get them answered for you and go from there. Also, finally, before we get going, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all of the things, Broncolor USA. If you are missing this live here, we will have it posted shortly. And of course, we do have many other videos full of wonderful content available for you as well. So we do have a pretty packed webinar for you today. So before we get going, I would like to introduce to everyone Galvin Collins, the Broncolor Assistant. Galvin is a photographer and cinematographer working in Portland, Oregon, and he has spent over 13 years splitting his time as a stills assistant and first AC. As a stills assistant, he has helped bring photographers' visions to life, and as a first AC, he has helped keep the picture sharp. So without further ado, Galvin Collins, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us, Blake. Thank you for that introduction, as always. We're talking about the Picolite today, and I'm excited to tell you about that. We're going to look at the projection attachment. We're going to look at the Picobox. We're going to look at the Fresnel, and we're going to look at the Snoot, and we're going to try to put it all together to light some small objects that we have here. We're going to be working with the Scoro 1600S pack here, 3 channels, 1600 joules max power. And then the Picolite head, also 1600 joules, small format head, designed for the specialty modifiers and for detail lighting. We're going to really jump into that here. If you do want any more info on the Scoro pack, we did a webinar some months back. Long one goes in depth about everything about the Scoro. Check that out on the YouTube channel. All right, let's talk about the Picolite. Right here, we've got the Broncolor Picolite. And it's not just a lamp, just another lamp head. It's not just another option. What it is kind of a complete system with specialized light shapers and adapters that will allow you to do detail lighting for small tabletop items. But they're also very useful for portrait photography. Basically, the limits are what you can come up with to do it. Why go with a Pico over a Pulso, a Uni, or a mobile light? Each light shaper is kind of designed to do their own specific thing. You know, if you're using a para for people or for, you know, different things like that, the Pico is really intended to light small objects. So the modifiers are smaller. They have more detail oriented pieces for getting small and specific light onto smaller subjects. However, you can actually, using an adapter that they have, mount any of the Broncolor standard modifiers and light shapers to this. It has a ring that goes on to the Pico and then the standard bayonet style mount. That's just a possibility too, kind of widens what these are useful for. One thing to note is these are 1600 joules. So if you're using a Scoro 3200 watt pack, you can only take that up to power 9 or a total of 1600 joules. You just don't, it's not going to explode catastrophically if you put 3200 joules in there. It's just going to greatly reduce the lifespan of these tubes. And if the tube's 1600 joule rated, you also can't count on the color being accurate at 3200. You're just going to shorten that life because you're running it in a non-optimally, but you're not going to explode it like dramatically, like a, you know, explosion. Anyway, one other thing to note here is, as you can see from our detail shot, this has a clear lens in here, which covers over the flash tube, the modeling light, and you can see the inside is a built-in reflector. So you get some efficient direct light if you choose to use it direct onto your subject. But a couple of the modifiers that we're working with, specifically the optical ones, the Fresnel and the projection attachment, it requires a matte glass for spreading the light and evening it out. So we're going to, real quick, while we're here, we're going to switch this out, and it's really easy. So first off, you want to have a light that's unplugged. We don't want to have any accidental fires while you're looking at it as an assistant. You do have to watch out. Sometimes photographers will be just working, and if you don't turn off the pack, unplug it, you know, whatever you need to do to protect yourself, so you'll get a flash to the eyes, and you know, a heavy flash can be a downside. So we're going to pull out this snap ring that has a two little kind of it's got two pieces there that you can grab and squeeze, and then pull that spring piece out. Now I like to use either gloves or soft cloth so that you're not actually touching the glass, and you're going to just tilt it out there. I don't know if you saw that, but I just tilted that out onto the glass. And then we're going to put the matte glass in, which I have on this set of soft cloths here. Now I touched the edge on that, which is generally okay, but it is better to use it with a soft cloth, which I have just installed that into the top of the light there, as you can see, and then we will replace the spring clamp ring there. And now that's ready to shoot. I prefer using the matte glass and the Picolite for most everything. A lot of the nice detail shapers and everything that you're going to be using really benefit from having that. It evens out the light there. The only thing you really don't need it for is the Picobox, which we'll talk about later, is very, very soft and even on its own natively. So first off, we're going to talk about the projection attachment. These are a lot of fun and great for doing detail work. It has these nice louvers, I've always called them louvers, that allow you to shape and create any of the light. It has a focus ring here. There is part of the anatomy of the Picolite that I had intended to cover is there's actually little hooks built in. Right, let's see if I can get so you can see it. Right in here on the end of the handle, there's these little hooks, and all of the specialty modifiers designed for the Picolite have a ring flange. So when you mount them on, they have a nice positive locking. Where are we at here? Has a nice positive locking into there. So even without that snapped in, it will stay nice and secure. And then you can snap it to lock it in. But back to the projection mount, there's also, I don't know if you can see on this label here, it says a maximum 30 flashes for 5 minutes. And that's where we get to kind of our first pro tip about working with these. Having the modeling light on generates heat, and multi-rapid flashes will generate heat. So at full 1600 joules, this is going to get really hot. And to protect the light and the modifier itself, they recommend to not do more than 30 full power flashes in 5 minutes. I do recommend only running the modeling light when you're setting up your light, and when you're just setting up and getting it to there. But when you get to the actual shooting, turn off that modeling light. As you'll hear when I turn these on, there's a fan inside the head, which will give us, hopefully it doesn't affect the audio too much, but that is something that when you are working with these, you will hear the fan. And we're just going to turn this on and get a little demonstration of what this projection can do. The projection attachment also comes with some slides that can go in that have some extra uses. It's got some small aperture and a large aperture and a medium aperture. And then it's got this, which you can put gobo cutouts. So if you want to project text or anything, you can get a gobo, like a little silver with whatever in there, or shapes that you have, that you can have those laser cut, or some businesses have them, but you can put those on there. But let's jump back over here.
And as we're getting set up here, Galvin, we do have our first question in the chat. Isa asks, how do we use the accessories that come with the projection attachment? Can you show how to properly attach and insert them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So let's bring this over here. Let's see, where's my second camera? And we'll bring this into frame here. There we go. Tighten this down, and that is good enough for that. All right. So as you'll see, we've got the Pico on, or the projection attachment on the Pico, and you'll see one of the louvers has a slight bend in it there, and that's the spot where you can take your, we're going to use a tight aperture here, So this is, there we go. You can see the tight aperture. And that is the area where it's really easy to slot it in. I try to orient the projection attachment up so that this would be like this. So that way, when you're making adjustments and stuff, the gravity is holding that in. There's no latch. But let me flip this around and I'll show you what this does. All right, so we'll get that into there. And then, like I said, I like to have that angled tab facing to the ceiling. And let's get ourselves some power. And we'll get this channel set up. All righty. So let's turn our modeling lamp on. All right, so we've got, and what can we see? All right, you can see that we've got the modeling lamp on and we are projecting light. Now, using that focus that I showed you, we can focus in or defocus the light to create a sharp edge. We've now defocused it, which means we're getting close. That's one little tip that I can also add. The focus on here, if you get too far, it can come all the way out. So do note that if you're shooting over the top of, subject or product that you don't want to damage and you are getting to the edge of the focus ability of the focus spot, I'd recommend throwing a little piece of tape on there or something to keep it nice and safe. But at this distance, which this is made for being a lot closer, so let's see if we can just angle this in a way that makes it so we can. There we go. That demonstrates it a little bit better. And we can see that. Yep, there we go. Which I pushed my louver in there. Now you can see how kind of defined that spotlight is. Now, if that's not enough, this is where we can add our masks, and we'll slide that into there. And then we can focus to get to that aperture. There we go. So there's our first aperture. Right now we're using the large, and just for the dramatic effect of it, we're going to jump in and we will take the small aperture. There we go. And now you can see how nice and tight that small aperture is. The other super useful, as I mentioned, these louvers that are here, this is how you can make a nice slash of light, or you can shape any rhombus that you would, I believe it's rhombus, that you need, and you can tighten up there. So as you can see, the slide up on the screen here, you can see how with using the 3 different size masks and the louvers, you can create a lot of unique shapes. And we can jump to the next slide in here, which will be alternate uses. This is a good creative opportunity to use a slash of light to, highlight a subject, to create a unique look, or make the light itself the subject by using a slash of light. Again, creativity limited to what you can come up with, but this offers some cool tools. Again, you can see the possibilities of using this for tabletop, but just know you can take these into the field and shoot portraits with them as well. We're going to work with this a little bit more later when we put it all together. So let's jump into looking at the Picobox, which I'm going to take this projection mount, which again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We can totally jump in, talk more thoroughly on any of the subjects that you want. But the projection attachment, we will use a little bit later when we put all of these elements together. So next here we are, the Picobox. So as far as a specialty modifier goes, this one is pretty special in my opinion. What we're looking at here might just seem like a piece of acrylic in a box, but it's not. Broncolor really, especially for doing small tabletop photography, think photographing jewelry, think photographing, wrist watches, anything like that that's has high shine and illumination. One of the things that's difficult when you're shooting shiny objects is your typical softbox will have, less light on the edges and a hot spot in the center. But they've done a lot of work to put in some louvers and really intelligent placement of this to really spread that light and create what is essentially even lighting from corner to corner Everywhere on this piece of acrylic is soft, even light. Where this is helpful is if you are putting this into a shiny subject, this shiny piece of wood, we know that there's not going to be a hot spot reflecting in any of there. All that illumination is going to be even from top to bottom, or anywhere this goes, it's going to be even. It's not going to have a spike or a hot spot in it, so you won't clip out if you're controlling your intensities. I was going to put a nice little slide to just demonstrate like I did with the projection attachment, but soft, even light just means you're looking at a soft, even gray wall. So we will just set this up real quick on this light, which I'm going to jump back out to my wide shot here, and we can show a demonstration here. And this is more for dramatic effect. We'll just take this and we will put it right here next to our subject. And I'm going to adjust this to, there we go. We'll do it like that. And then we'll do it horizontal. And then we'll latch this. Still has a little adjustability. And because I want to know where to shoot at, we're going to use our Sekonic light meter here. And I have now again, we're doing this for dramatic effects, so you're going to see the modifier in this shot here. I'm going to test my strobe. Yep, looks like we got some boom. And I'm going to jump in here for a quick meter reading. F11. And then I'll jump over to my capture 1. I'm just going to talk.
And of course, now is a wonderful time to say, as always, because of the wonders of the internet, you may not see a strobe popping, but in fact, it is doing so. We guarantee you. We'll show you that in just a few moments.
All right. So this is, again, just for kind of a dramatic effect test here. You can see at F11, I metered it. What we're looking at, you can see there's nice, even and soft light. Again, we will bring this in concert with everything else as we work with creating a light for this little setup that we have down at the end of the table. The Picobox also has some alternative uses. Again, a soft source that's really a compact size can create a really nice soft portrait light that falls off fairly quickly because it is a smaller source. So you can move it in really close because it's really nice and soft, and it's just a fun light to work with. And again, lighting a face with this super soft source is quite nice. On this particular image, you can look and you can see that there is a soft nose shadow that's being kicked down that has a little edge to it, and that's because of the size of the modifier. And you can really work with that to do some nice Hollywood type portraits. It's a lot of fun. Again, thinking of alternative uses and other ways of jumping in and utilizing this material. Let's jump in further. We'll talk about the Fresnel spot, which is our next modifier on our agenda today. There we go. We'll set this to the side here. Actually, we're going to set this down here. We'll put it over there later. All right. And I'm actually, just because we're going to take this and put this light on our mini boom here. That's where it's going to go in our lighting setup. Yeah, the other thing that's nice about Pico lights that they're very lightweight. So if you are on the run, on the go, maybe using the Move kit, and you want a lightweight head that's pretty versatile. Versatile. We can. It's easy to carry. As an assistant, I'm not packing around a ton of weight. You can run, you can gun, you can get where you need to go. It's quite handy that way. So now we are on our mini boom, and run my cable safely out of the way.
And while we're setting that up, Galvin, Neil in the chat has some questions about the mounting hooks on the edge of the Fresnel. Can you show that again a little bit closer?
Oh, absolutely.
As we're putting it on?
Absolutely. So I'm going to have to get my other lamp head here for you to show that. So we've got our handle here. And then if you look right, there we go. Right here is a little mounting hook. And I wonder if I can present that to camera, if it'll focus. Will it focus? It won't. There we go. So, oh, we can probably hide Dan Cooney's info. There we go. So there you can see the hook. So when we mount this, like the Fresnel, what we're doing is we're going to slide this on, and there's actually little gaps in the Fresnel there. And we get those little gaps onto those hooks, and then we rotate, and then now without latching it, it's safetied on there. If you rotate this, you can come to the end of that, and on the Picobox, there's actually a little lock or a slider latch that locks in so that it won't be able to jump off of those hooks. Again, for that safety, if you are shooting over the top of a subject that you want to keep safe, which I think anytime you're shooting over the top of a subject, you want to have some safety. I do recommend safety chains for shooting over, because the last thing you want is, you know, you got this on a boom, whatever, something happens, or the light falls off, or, you know, sometimes you're working in teams and there's that person that doesn't have the knowledge that you've got, and somebody sets something up wrong. You know, you don't want to damage a product. You don't want to damage a person if you're shooting over the top of people. You know, just bears in mind that we have a, safety is in order. And we actually have these safety chains that you can get. These are great for mounting the light to the boom. Just good to note. Anyway, let's jump back into here to the Fresnel spot. The Fresnel, which actually I put on the light so quickly already because we were talking about it. Jumping around. So this is our Fresnel spot lens. It utilizes a glass Fresnel lens that collimates the light, which means it takes all of the light being presented and projects it down into a even beam. We've got these adjusters on the side here that allows you to tighten or loosen the beam from 15 degrees to 35. Again, really great for small setups. Again, using the matte glass in there is super, it's important. You want to do that so that you don't end up with any weird tube shape in there, tube shapes in your light projection. I'm going to pop this back onto our main light here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to jump into camera view, which I have this light here. Move that out of the way. So now we're looking through my camera here, and we're going to turn on our Fresnel. There we go. And we're going to rotate this in and create a little pool of light there, which we're going to jump in, and we're going to also take a meter reading, see where we're at. That's at an F4. That sounds about where I want to be. I just got to jump back into my Capture One software and switch this back to F4. And then we'll do a test shot and see where we're at. All right. So what I'm seeing is a good middle gray. We're not, a little bit brighter than middle gray, but I think that pool is a little small. So we're going to go and we're going to adjust that using our, you can see with the little tabs on the side, we're going to adjust that. And then we're going to shoot a shot here and see what we got here. That's looking a little better. I think I want to aim it a little bit more to the right. I think the spread is looking good. We'll fire another one. And we will have a look. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I might take that down a little bit, but I'm really happy with that. So jumping back out here, that's our Fresnel attachment. Another thing to think about is alternative, or the Fresnel effect. We actually have a slide that'll come up here, just showing the Fresnel effect and some images that I've shot. It just shows, you know, the collimated light pushed all the way in at the 15 degree and then spread out to the 35 degree. One thing to note, and as you can see in this, as the light is focused, there's more intensity. As it spreads, there's less because that light is going and working wider. You have to increase the power as you go with a wider spread of light. Also, one thing to note as a difference between the projection attachment and the Fresnel spot is how this has a very soft edge. It goes from bright to a very quick gradient to dark, and that has a very soft transition. That's where it's different than, say, the projection attachment. So also we can jump to the next slide, which is alternative uses. As you can imagine, shooting portraits is an opportunity here. What I like is you can get a very like old 20s Hollywood sort of portrait, utilizing that Fresnel to cast a nice tight nose shadow. It has a slightly harder edge because you are using very direct and collimated light. You can create a nice high key portrait, and it does create sharp shadows that fall off because it is a smaller light in comparison to working with something of larger scale. You're definitely taking the ability of that light to go from its ultra bright to dark as a tool and not a weakness in this sort of scenario. It's pretty cool. I really dig using these. So next up, let's jump into our fourth set or fourth tool, which is the Snoot. The Snoot set, which is because it's a whole kit in its own of lighting modifiers, is a Snoot. So right off the bat, there's a spring piece here, but right off the bat, we have just a very simple Snoot, which will reduce the spread of the light coming out of the Pico on its own. And then as the accessory parts of it, we have two aperture masks, which are, larger and a smaller. And then we have three grids. Grids, as we know from working with grids on soft boxes or on reflectors, take that light and it allows it to go through a certain way. I am doing a terrible job of showing a grid. There we had it. We'll use the bigger one. It'll be easier. Anyway, it shows the light is dead on and it goes through. And then as it turns, it cuts the light off. So it stops it from spreading wide. How you set this up correctly would be if you're going to use an aperture mask, you would put your aperture mask in. And if you're going to use one of your grids, put your grid in. And then you put the spring in there. And then this mounts onto the Pico light, which I have a light right here. And we will set this up. And we'll do a couple of little test shots here right off the bat. And we're just going to use this as a quick key light. I'm fighting my tools here. There we go. All right. And let's just, what do we got? This light here we're working with, and I've got that marked as the spot right now. All right, so we're just going to shoot real quick. That might be a little bit too much power. Take that down to the bottom, and we're going to fire a quick shot and just see what this looks like in capture one. All right, so that is way too spicy. I actually can't take it down anymore that way. So let's do this 5-6, fire another one. All right, so that's a little bit showing that it's cooking in there. That's without the modifier. And then let us put the Snoot on. This is with only the Snoot, none of the modifier attachments. All right, here we go. So now we've just added the Snoot to it, and you can see the difference between these two photos. This is the bare light, and it's just putting light all over onto the backdrop everywhere. And now we've really narrowed it down so that light is a beam. So next, we're going to, again, anybody jump in with questions if you have any questions. We are going to jump in, and just to show the effect, we're going to use the smallest aperture available. And we are going to use the tightest grid available. Again, we take our spring, we put that in there, and then we mount this to our light, latch it down, and I'll just adjust a little bit there, and we'll fire a shot, which this will be fairly dramatic. So that now we've lost a lot of light. Let's punch a whole stop. Yeah, it's a stop and a half. That feels pretty good. And then we'll fire one more shot. And so now you can see, there we go. So we've got our first one. That's the bare, just the Picolite. There's with just the Snoot. And here is with the tight aperture and the grid. So that intention is taking that light and making it small and applicable through, and you can see the Snoot effect here. Again, the other thing to note in comparison to our Fresnel and our focus spot is the softness of the transition. So going from where the light is at its brightest to where it's at its darkest, this has a nice soft transition. So what we've done is we've taken a light source 2 that is about 4 inches wide, the bare head, and we've now taken it, we've made it very small. So in that last photo on the bottom center, you can see it's a very small, soft amount of light, which is pretty handy for lighting small objects, adding a little bit of light to here or there. Alternative uses, this is, you kind of pick up on it by now. Shoot a person with it. That soft transition from, bright to dark gives you, a unique opportunity. It gives you a unique look. So you highlight different parts of a face or, different parts of a person. And I think this is where we can jump into the next slide here to show you putting it all together, what we're going to do. So this is a little lighting scheme that I put together using 3 out of these 4 modifiers. And we are going to take this as our idea and let's get going. Now we already set up our focal spot because I think it was a good example of how to set up that focal spot and what it can do. So we've already got a focal spot coming in there. We're definitely going to have to move that lamp head. But I'm going to get our grid here. And how you can store these, this is actually another tip here, is you can store these with all of the available modifiers inside the Snoot. And you can put those to the side. The Picobox we're going to use on this lamp that I have over here. We're going to jump off to the side and we're going to match up our tabs and the hooks onto the side there. There is on the Picobox a little lever attachment. You probably can't see that if you're watching on your phone. And that keeps it so that it will stop. It's not going to fall off, which is handy again because this is the heavier of the modifiers. Put this into a vertical orientation and I'm going to see where this is. Oh, I got to turn it on at the pack. All right, so now we're seeing this. Now, one thing I'm going to do here is if I put this up high, this soft light is going to cast a lot onto the ground here. So I'm going to use the natural mask that the tabletop can create and have this pretty low so that I can take advantage of the nice light, but not overlight my foreground of the that the product's on. All right, now I'm just going to have the Picobox. Another handy tip is when you're working with multiple heads, you can take a piece of tape and you can write what the modifier is on the head so that when you look at your pack, I go, okay, this is the Picobox. I know that that's on channel 3. So when I make changes, I can make changes to just channel 3. The Picobox, let's run a quick meter reading. All right, that's hitting at an F4, and I think I want it to be an F4.5, so, or at least 4 1/3. So, yep, we're going to do that. Let's do a quick test shot, and this will be with just the Picobox. And there's still have my light in there, but all right. So I'm going to fire this again with this light out of the way. So what I'm looking at is we've got some nice highlight. We've got some fill light in here. If we look, we got some detail landing nicely into this front area. We've got some highlights. And I'm looking at the highlights here, and they're all coming in nice. And I mean, we're under 200 and 250 being bad. I think I'm going to give it at least another third of a stop just to give it a little bit more punch in there. Let's have a look at that. I punched that up a bit. Yeah, there we go. I'm liking that. And then let's look at this with the background. It's our Fresnel spot. We dialed that in a second ago, and which I just turned that on at the pack there. And we will fire that off and then have a look. All right. So we've got the figure on the right with some nice light on it. The little ring box on the left needs something else. And this is where I'm going to take advantage of the projection attachment. We are going to project a very specific amount of light right onto the top of that box to give it exactly what we want, which is a nice highlight on the top of that box. So I'm just presetting this up a bit here. Here's our projection attachment back in there. Again, we slide onto the barrel, and then we catch into the hooks on the end of the handle there. Latch that down. I'm actually going to adjust this because I want the angled tab, which again, you can see on here, there's one tab that has the angle on it. That's where you know you can slide your gobos and your masks into. And I want that to be on the top here. So I just want to get that set up. That way gravity holds itself. All right. And we'll start turning our modeling lamp on here. I'm going to turn my other two channels off, so we're just working with this one. And we can see we've got some of the louvers have been in there. I definitely know I need one of the apertures. I'm pretty sure it's the tight aperture. Go in here. Blake, how we doing? Are there any questions? Is everybody any good questions to answer?
So far, so good. We do have one question that I'm going to bring to you after we show and finish our demonstration here. Looks like Jim in the chat here says, how are you taking meter readings and firing a single lamp? I don't see you disconnecting the lamp from the pack.
Oh, good question. So the Scoro S pack has each channel has a number next to it here, and I can actually press a button to engage or disengage that. So I'm not unplugging the head. What I'm doing is just turning the channel off on the pack. Now the light meter, the Sekonic, this is the 858U, and it has the Broncolor transmitter in it. I have the opportunity with this light meter to adjust lamp heads as well. So I can tell it, right now it's set to Studio 1, which I'm on. And if I, on this pack, establish Studio 1, lamp head 1, 2, 3, then I could actually, inside of my studio settings in the meter, do that. But I'm just, since I'm right here next to it, I can just hit the buttons here and just turn the channels on and off and then get my specific meter readings. But there's a couple different ways to get to that solution with the meter or with the pack. It's available through the app. You can jump in to the mobile app or on the computer app for Broncolor, and you can engage or disengage channels or lamp heads according to that. But anyway, let's jump back in here. So
before we get going too much here, I do have a couple other quick questions here for us. Neil in the chat asks, what is the efficiency with the projector? Are you losing a huge loss of light for when you're utilizing it?
With the projector, I don't see a lot of loss of light. It's got some, well, yeah, maybe a little bit. The Fresnel is a collimated effect. This is a focus effect. Right now, I mean, we can do a little bit of a test. We have a light meter, and I have a lamp. And let's see, we have this. I mean, you're going to lose light when you have your spot. So here's my, without the aperture in there, I'm pulling a 283. And then when I add my aperture, I'm running at a 2.0. So I lost, what, 2/3 of a stop there. And then the bare lamp head, I'm hitting 5.6. So yes, there is a loss of light when we use the projection spot as far as the intensity that the lamp head is projecting into it and what you're getting out on the other side. I think that's kind of okay in as much as the what you're doing with the light is you are reducing its size, so it becomes relevant to the smaller, smaller objects that you're lighting. So we've now taken a light that's 3 inches across, that's throwing direct beams, and creating a light source that's now, 2 inches across. So we're halving it, and we're creating an intensity. So, and in this shot here, what I'm doing is, you can see there's a inlaid heart on the top of this ring box here. And our last shot we can look at was probably my hand in front of it. There we go. Was this shot, which didn't have any highlight or any detail on there, but we wanted to pick that up. So what I have done is, and you can see here with the modeling light, I've just focused this in using the small aperture inside of the focal spot. And with none of the louvers, I'm not taking advantage of those at this moment. We're gonna also take a quick meter reading. I think we said we were at 285, and I want to get that up to about a 4. Yeah, which is where we were at. There we go, with all the other sources. And let's take a shot, and then we will jump in and see. Oh, I didn't have my other 2 channels on. Let's go back to that. That is all set up. And one more shot. And there we go. So we've now used these 3 lights to kind of create a nice, fairly dramatic tabletop presentation of these 2 objects. Yeah, that's a pretty good from in the natural light and to there. Again, you can, vary settings. Everything's to each photographer's taste. Again, I like to work with the modeling lights off once I get my lighting established, just because I don't want it to heat up in there and not be able to shoot. The whole idea of all these are tools. It's tools for you to be able to do stuff. And you can do what I'm doing with this, with the Snoot, putting that tight aperture, that tight grid, and getting it in there. I didn't want it to be that close in. As you saw, we're shooting in the horizontal. I think it looks better in the webinar, especially when you go to here or here. Fills up the screen more. If I was shooting this, I'd probably shoot it in portrait orientation, unless I needed to do it for a web and you want size, some room to do your graphics. But you've got the, if you want to have, I've used this so that it was further away from the subject and creating the same effect. You can use the Snoot with the grid to do the same sort of thing and highlight some. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. So anyway, you can use the Snoot to create the same effect. So what we've done, though, is we're taking these tools, familiarized ourselves with them a little bit, and then done a simple lighting scenario. Oh, and let's do one last thing here. I'm going to just have the focal spot on, and we'll fire a shot. I will turn on our Fresnel. We will fire a shot. And then let's turn on our Picobox, our fill light, and fire a shot. And now we'll jump into the computer. This is a good way to break down and see what each light is doing. This is our Picobox, providing a nice soft fill and some illumination for our ground. And then we've got our Fresnel spot, which is giving us that nice highlight on the background that makes it something unique and interesting. And then we've got our focal spot, which is punching in and giving us that detail on the top there, all added together to create this nice image of these two small objects. Anyway, that brings us to the last part of my presentation, which is the do's and don'ts of the Picolite. The main thing is that just knowing that it's a 1600 joule head and that you don't want to put 3200 joules through it. This lamp head will work with all the current Broncolor packs, as well as some of the older ones. If you find yourself in a studio with a graphite, the Pico will also work on the graphite packs. Those are the ones you'll see the most out in the field still. But again, 3200 watt or 3200 joules, effectively the same thing. Don't run full power through this. Each light shaper, as we mentioned, has a recommended amount of flashes per 5 minutes, or, you know, something to that effect, that it's mainly to keep the head and the lamp cool. You can do that also by keeping the modeling light off, and to keep the, you know, just, you don't want that heat to build up to cause any damage to the head or to the modifier. Generally speaking, it will stop firing and then it'll have to cool down for a little bit if you get to that threshold of too hot. Also, there's questions as to why there's a tungsten modeling light in there. That's really so you can replace it, you can change it, and you can really make sure that you are tweaking and tuning with these modifiers. It works very well for presenting what that light is doing. So yeah, that's kind of my do's and don'ts. It's just main thing, watch that heat, pay attention to how much you're flashing it, and keep that modeling light, you know, on when you're using it and then off when you're not. That's what I got. That's
all right. Awesome. So we've got two questions here. The first question here is going to be from Ed. Can you soften the edge of the spot when using the Picobox?
Soften the edge of the spot when using the Picobox. Oh, so the focal spot having a hard edge, can you soften that by adding the Picobox light to it? Is that the question? Or
Ed, we might need a little bit more clarification there. So if you can give us some more information there in the Q&A, we're happy to answer it. And then while we're waiting for that, back earlier in everything here, Jim asked, can you show the adapter and mount a P70 reflector? He said he also had some problems removing the adapter. So let's see what we can kind of help troubleshoot and look at here.
yeah, absolutely. Let me grab a P70. All right, so we've got our standard P70 reflector. You can also do this with speed rings or anything to that effect. Jump to our close-up. And we've got, you know, our standard bayonet, small to small, big to big, latch in and lock. So now we've turned the P70 into a Pico mountable accessory. And we'll drop this light over here. There we go. And then, so again, the bottom of this, you can see there's the openings right here for the hooks. And then we've got the hooks here, so we'll slide on to the Pico. And then rotate and latch. All right, so now that we've got that, I also probably think, yeah, that's good. All right, so we've got that. And if you want to remove just the Pico or just the P70, again, what I generally do when I'm doing that is I rotate the light till it stops. Then I pull the remove or the tab, and then get those free, and then I come free of the light with that. I don't know if you said you're having it is a stiff connection. So if you said you're having some problems with that, it's probably this thumb. The lock mechanism on here is very stiff. Goes back on, latches in, good there. And then remove from the Picolite the whole assembly, rotate to the gap in the, rotate off of there. But yeah, that's how you'd set up like a standard modifier. You can also do this with soft boxes and any of the, Broncolor modifiers.
Beautiful. Okay, so I think we have some more information back from Ed here, and I think
good.
I get what they're asking. Can you have a soft spot C circle on the box rather than a sharp spot circle on the box? We're referring to the ring box, the heart-shaped box. So I
Absolutely.
guess let's possibly see about doing some shaping of that light utilizing the louvers.
Absolutely. We can do that. So that focus ring at the front of the spot attachment that I was telling you about right here, this focus ring is how we adjust that sharpness of the pool of light going into the top of that box. We can jump in and, like I say, it's pretty quick to swap between all these different modifiers. It's a very good system to adjust between and work with.
And can we pull that P70 out of the way? I think we're missing all the action. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. There we go. All right. And I need my spot. And we've got that, which then we'll go here and move this around a little bit. All right. So one of the things, and let's see if my camera can show this, that I was trying to do here is you can see there's a tiny little crescent of light. Well, maybe you can't. I wonder if this view. Yep, there we go. All right, that will do. All right, so now what I was working on here is there's a little bit of light that is, you can kind of see cresting around that. So when I fire a shot and I go into my software, what you can see is right here was that little overage. So what you were talking about is reducing the hardness of the light. And that's where I'm going to take this is the focus, and I'm going to defocus that pool of light. Now we'll just do a shot for a demonstration. So now we've defocused it and we've kind of created a little bit more of a pool around it. So now we will play that game of adjusto changeo. Getting a little bit closer. We may have to lean this light in a bit more. All these sorts of things are why I think tabletop photographers are some of the coolest mad scientists in photography. Also, I only had one of the matte glass, so I'm actually working without it. So this would be smoother if we had the matte glass in there. And this is probably going to be too narrow. Oh, yeah. Look at this laser beam. All right. We're going to change out our matte here for a smaller one. Oh, geez. Or for a wider one, not a smaller one.
And of course, as we are coming in for a landing here and showing everything, of course, please feel free to ask us some more questions. We still have a couple of more minutes here if anything is coming up, but hopefully we'll have ourselves a nice little demonstration here as well in just a moment.
There we go. All right, so now we have defocused and we switched out our hard matte. Now there's way too much light in there. So let us take that down a stop and a half to start. And we will fire another one. Wow, did that really just go that way? There we go. Now we're there-ish. I'm catching a little bit more reflection than I would like to camera. So I think I could rotate this forward and then rotate the lamp head back. Changing that up a little bit. There we go. All right, so we've now added a little bit more softness to the edge of that, which we can work with more and more. I know it looks interesting with the, oh, see, and that's, aha. So here's a good example. I've defocused it to the point where this is about to pop out. I just threaded it back in, but you got to watch out when you start to defocus it. But again, it just takes the time to, you know, adjust and move it around. We could also, instead of using the mask, we could just jump in and use the louvers. Of course, one of them's fighting me. There we go. Now we got it back in order. We can use these to adjust in. Yeah, this will be a square now. So now we're just kind of adjusting. If I were doing this on set for real, I'd be working probably with that sphere, or I would go to the Snoot with the grid to create that softer edge effect. Just what I was doing when I had the Snoot, I was casting a lot of over on there, which is why I liked using that really hard edge to create that effect, which I thought ended up looking pretty good in the final put together of everything, and it had a nice little bit of a highlight. But again, photography is all to personal taste and to client taste. So definitely you could work with it further and adjust further to make that effect happen, you know, on set, in camera, right there, just by adjusting all of the opportunities that you have to adjust with these modifiers. I hope that helped.
Okay, perfect. And I think I'll take this as our last question here. Jim is asking, what are you using as your remote trigger?
Oh, gotcha. So I have, I'm using a Canon R6, and I have the old intervalometer remote that I got the adapter. So I've had this for many years, but anyway, I just got the adapter that hooks it to the new R series cameras, or the R6 specifically, because it has the mini connection. But that's what I'm using to trigger. For triggering the strobes, I'm using the RFS 2.2 transmitter. It's a very versatile tool for working with high-speed sync or with all of your standard strobes, and like Scoros and Ceros and all of the kits, anything. So I like that, and it's camera specific. They have them for major camera brands. And then again, I'm using the Scoro, which, now that we can, just to answer some question, re-answer that question from earlier, we can probably put this up here and demonstrate the, I did move my overhead camera. Will this show it now? Yeah, there we go. So I've written down what each one of these lamp heads are on a piece of tape on top of the connectors, and then to adjust between the channels, so I'm only firing one at a time, I'm just using the channel number markers. Anyway, that was just the detail shot from our conversation earlier.
All right, and I'm looking up an answer here for Ryan, but you might be able to do it a little bit easier here. Ryan asks, could you go through how many grids come with the kit again and their sizes?
Oh, yeah, for the Snoot, our Snoot accessory here. And then I don't know exactly what degree of, it's kind of your standard 3, you know, wide grid, medium grid, and tight grid, which is going to be what, your 15, your 25, and your 35. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what they are. And then the 2 apertures that all fit into the snoot. And again, how I think the proper way to set it up is you take your, if you're doing your aperture in there, and a grid. And then that mounts directly to your light. I'll shut these off so the fan stops humming in my ear. And then for storing it, like I said earlier, you can take all of your elements that are in here, and all of your elements stacked up will fit right into the snoot. And then they're all safe. They won't get crushed. And then you get your spring in there. And then actually, you could even mount that to a light if you wanted to like knock down almost all the light. But that's how you'd keep it safe in your studio, or rental houses will usually transport them like that. So if you get this from a rental house, generally all of the accessories are just in the end there. So you'll pull it out and adjust, then you put in what you want.
And it looks like, from what I can see here, the grids that come with it are all 3 with a 77 millimeter diameter, a 1/16, a 1/8, and a 3/16. And that should be there. It doesn't. I don't specifically see what degree of a grid we're looking at, but those are the 3 that come with the kit. Well, awesome. Yes. So what we'll do now is we'll consider this, and we'll take everything in for a landing here finally. Thank you again, everyone, for coming in and joining us today. Thank you again to Galvin for showing us all the fun stuff in his studio there. Please, 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 if you have not already, go to broncolor.us. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter and keep in touch with us so that we can share with you all of our webinars that we've got planned for the rest of the year as they come up. Also, that's going to be the best way to keep in touch with us as well, to see what new products, what new adventures, what new everything that we've got coming in the next coming years. So thanks again for joining us, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.